Hi everyone, in Algebra 2B, we are going to be going over your questions for 100 Part B, Lesson 100 Part B. The first one we're going to look at is the y is less than or equal to -3. Now, when y is less than, we know that we're going to shade everything below. And when there's an equal sign under, it's going to be a solid line, not a dotted line. Now for this next one, I have to solve my equation for y before I can graph it. So that means y is going to be equal to -4x minus 2. That should be less than, my bad. When it's less than, again, it's going to be everything below. And then when it's no equal sign, it's going to be a dotted line, not a solid line. So y is less than -3. Well, -3 is right here on the y-axis. We are going to draw a horizontal line through that point, and that will be that line. My second one is going to go through -2, and it's going to go down 4 over +1. 1, 2, oh, I can't go that way. I'm going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 over -1. And this is going to be your dotted line. So it should look like that. So now for the shading portion of this problem. For the first line, the solid line, I'm going to shade everything below it. So that means I'm going to shade everything under here. And then for my dotted line, I'm going to shade everything below the dotted line. And so below would be everything over here. Which means that your answer is going to be this portion, the portion below the solid line and below the dotted line. And that would be your result. Okay, now moving on to number 17. The first thing that we see is that this is going to be integers. So that means we're going to do points, not a dot or an arrow. Now, when we look at our inequality, we see that there's a slash through it. So I'm going to start by flipping that and taking away the equal sign. Then I'm going to move the 2 to the other side by subtracting it. So I have x is greater than 3. For my other inequality, I'm going to move the 3 to the other side by subtracting it. So then I have x is less than 0. Now I'm going to create my number line. Now for 0, my dot is going to be open on 0 because it's not going to be equal to 0. But it says everything less than 0. So that means I'm going to fill in all the points to the left of 0. Now for 3, greater than 3, there is no equal sign again, so that would be open on 3. But if you draw a line in the alligator's mouth, it points to the right of 3, so that means we would fill in 4 and then fill in 5. Now looking at number 18, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to distribute the 2 to the exponent and then the 1/2 to the exponent. So that would give me a to the power of 2x plus 4, a to the power of b over 2, over a to the power of 1 minus b over 2. Now I want to bring this all to the top, which means that when you bring it to the top, it's going to flip from positive to negative or negative to positive. So my 1 is going to become -1, and my b over 2 will be positive b over 2. Now, since all of those have a base of a, we can actually combine all the exponents. So that would become a to the 2x plus 4 plus b over 2 minus 1 plus b over 2. Now there's a couple of things I can combine. I can combine the 4 and the -1, and then I can combine the b half plus b half. So the 2x would be left by itself, so that would just be a to the 2x. But then 4 minus 1 would be 3. And then half of a b plus half of a b would be a full b. So you just plus b. And that would be your result for number 18. Now moving on, we're going to look at number 19. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to add the fractions that are furthest in the denominator, which in this case would be these fractions right here, making a common denominator of xy. Everything else is going to stay the same in the equation, but my denominator is going to become xy plus 1 over xy. Now what you're going to do is you multiply this denominator by the numerator. Everything else is going to stay the same. So that would turn into just xy over xy plus 1. Now I want to make a common denominator between these two fractions. And that common denominator would be xy plus 1. So the top is going to stay the same with just x. In my denominator, I would have x squared y times xy plus 1 minus xy all over xy plus 1. Then you're going to multiply this by the reciprocal. And you could distribute that. So when I multiply x times xy plus 1, I would get x squared y plus x all over, and I'm going to distribute the x there too. So that would be x to the third, y to the second, plus x squared y minus xy. But notice something about every single term in this equation. Every single one of them has an x in it. So I'm actually going to take away one x from every part of the equation, making that one just an x and a y plus 1. That's going to be over. If I take away one x, that would be x squared, y squared. Take away one x would just be xy. Take away an x would just be y. You can't take away a y because obviously this 1 doesn't have a y in it. So that's as simplified as it can get. Now moving on to number 22, the first thing that I'm going to do is simplify. So I have 3 minus I in the numerator. I know that I squared is equal to -1, and then that would just be minus 3i. So if I'm going to multiply by the conjugate, you just have to multiply by flipping one of the signs in the denominator. I'm going to flip the sign of the I. So that would be -1 plus 3i. You do need to distribute this through. So 3 times -1 would be -3. 3 times 3i squared would be, or 3 times 3i would just be 9i. Then -I times -1 would be positive I. -I times positive 3i would be 3. Oh, sorry, -3. And then I squared is -1. It's going to be over -1 times -1, which is positive 1. -1 times 3i would be -3i. -3i times -1 would be positive 3i. Then lastly, -3i times 3i would be -9i squared. Again, I squared is -1. So now we're going to simplify. So I have the 9i plus I have this -3, and this would turn into plus 3. So that actually cancels out. So that would just be 10i over this 1 plus 9. And then the 3i's cancel, so 1 plus 9 would be 10. That would all simplify to just I. And that would be your result for number 22. Moving on to number 23, you're going to need your calculator for this one. This one's a little bit simpler because really it's just two triangles that you're going to be adding together. I'm going to start with my first triangle. Goes to the right of the origin, so my r will be positive. Then it comes up off the x-axis, which makes my u also positive. So my x is going to be 6 times cosine of 62. And then my y is going to be 6 times sine of 62. And my calculator is 6 times 62 cosine equals, that would be 2.82. And then 6 times 62 sine equals, that's going to be 5.30. So I said my r is going to be positive and my u is going to be positive, so that would be positive 2.82 r and then plus 5.30 u. Now for my second triangle, this one's going to the left of the origin, so my r is going to be negative, comes up off the x-axis, so my u will be positive. Same process, so it would be slant times cosine of your angle, which is 28. And then y is going to be slant times sine of your angle. So 8 times 28 cosine equals, that would be 7.06. And then 8 times 28 sine equals, and that would be 3.76. So my r is negative, so that would be negative 7.06 r. My u is positive, so that's 3.76 u. When I add those together, I'm going to do 2.82 minus 7.06, which would give me negative 4.24 r. Then I'm going to do 5.3 plus 3.76, and that would be 9.06 u. And that would be your result. Now lastly, number 29, we are asked to convert this from feet cubed per minute to inches cubed per second. I'm going to start by just converting this from feet to inches. So there is 1 foot in 12 inches, and don't forget to cube that. Then I have to get from minutes to seconds. There's 1 minute in 60 seconds. So my feet cubed would cancel, my minute would cancel. I would be left with 400 times 12 cubed over 60, and that would be inches cubed per second. And that concludes your questions on 100 Part B. Don't forget to turn in this lesson tomorrow, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful Easter vacation. Bye!